Welcome to Nuked Radio. This is episode 99. Today is Tuesday, March the 12th, 2013. I'm your host, Christina Consolo, and with me today, as she has been almost every show in the past year, is Jules.
Hi, Christina. Congratulations.
Hi. Thanks for being here, except when the ATV fell on you.
Yeah.
And when you took a much-needed vacation.
Yes.
And also with us today is activist and comedian Lee Camp, who speaks out on lots of issues, even the nuclear stuff. And thanks for being here today, Lee.
Thanks for having me. So this is your 1 year and your 99th episode. This is huge.
Well, yesterday we played a 2-hour interview with Loren Murray, and I'll be uploading that later on YouTube today. We were hoping to have Paul Garner on for part of that interview, but we couldn't get through to his cell, so we're going to do a separate interview with him. On Saturday, March 9th, there was a whistleblowers conference in San Francisco. That's been uploaded to YouTube. There's a few stories in there that are absolutely must listen. One in particular about workers from Livermore Labs who had been going and having lunch at a park and drinking beer and peeing on the eucalyptus bushes. And then when they did a background radiation survey of the park, the officials couldn't figure out why is there so much plutonium in the bushes. And Saturday night I was on United We Strike, which is a worldwide radio marathon, and I got reprimanded after because I played Lee's clip about the Department of Energy working nuclear waste into our belt buckles and medical implants and silverware. And it's always easier to ask forgiveness than beg permission, I guess is my opinion. But I'm glad to know you do have like a clean version of your stuff, although I'll probably never use it.
I do. I make a clean one of everything. I'm also the most, you'll be excited to hear, the most bleeped English language thing that's ever been aired in Iran. So.
Really?
Yeah. They for Occupy Week, the TV show, they played one of my clips, but they bleep everything out. But they don't normally play that much English over there, and then they certainly don't play that much bleeped English.
Right. Yeah, I see you do a lot of Occupy stuff. I've been watching your videos all morning, helping nurse me back from my nuclear hangover from the 2-year anniversary yesterday. And we
Right.
really appreciate what you do, and we need to laugh about how ridiculous our situation is sometimes.
Yeah.
Also, to remind everybody, Helen Caldicott's symposium is going on right now in New York City. It's been live streamed, and it will continue today. Check it out. We will be playing clips from that over the next few shows also. And we're hoping to hear from Janice Powell, if not today, maybe on Thursday's show, who emceed the premiere of Surviving Japan in San Francisco. At the last minute, she volunteered, and we gave her our 3 passes that we had. So I hope everything went well. I know she had a really long drive to get there, but she was really excited about doing that for us. I wanted to share a couple of really great posts that people put up on Facebook yesterday for the 2-year anniversary. This was from Papa Peeps in the UK. God bless to all the victims of the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster in Japan on March 11th, 2011, and subsequent days. All my love goes out to the peeps in Japan and also throughout the world who have suffered and who are still suffering from this ongoing nuclear catastrophe at Fukushima Daiichi destroyed nuclear power plant in Japan. But we must fight on to end nuclear power. Please give respect to an entire nation, Japan, who are living in a place where no one should live. It's too contaminated now, and it gets worse each and every day. A very sad period in the history of humanity again. From Harvey Wasserman, Fukushima's airborne fallout came to our west coast within a week of the catastrophe. It's a virtual certainty American children are being affected. As health researcher Joe Mangano puts it, reports of rising numbers of west coast infants with underactive thyroid glands after Fukushima suggest that Americans may have been harmed by Fukushima fallout. Studies, especially of the youngest, must proceed immediately. From Patty Broussard, every morning 3,000 cleanup workers at the Fukushima disaster site don hooded hazmat suits, air-filtered face masks, and multiple glove layers. Most of the gear is radioactive waste by day's end. Multiply those cast-offs by the 730 days since a tsunami wrecked the Daiichi nuclear station 2 years ago, and the trash could fill 6 Olympic swimming pools. The tens of thousands of waste bags stored in shielded containers illustrate the dilemma of dealing with a nuclear accident. Everything that it touches becomes toxic. A poster at Daiichi's command center reads, "This is not the end. This is the beginning of a new nuclear age." Kevin Blanche wrote, "Now I am fighting for my life, and 2 years of Fukushima reporting and fighting in magnificent detail. My conclusion, post-ignorance, not today, maybe someday, as I hope future generations will appreciate my work, our work, Jan and many others' hard work. As my doctor said to me 2 days ago, as I cried in her arms, Kevin, if you live or die, you will know you did everything humanly possible to live and to help others live." Drew Lamb said, March 11th marks the 2-year anniversary of the Tohoku earthquake and subsequent tsunami that ravaged Honshu and damaged multiple nuclear reactor plants in Japan. This is an event that caused me to become an activist. I want to acknowledge my friends who have worked to warn people, expose the lies, and help mankind adapt to this disaster. Todd, Eric, Brandon, Darren, Fred, Chuck, Gail, Christina, Jules, Madison, Kevin Blanche, Bob, Kurt, Kevin Allen, Kevin G., Robo, Pascal, and Troy. I hope I didn't miss anyone. This event changed my life in a huge way. Those of you who have ever stayed up all night doing research and learning about radiation and nuclear energy know what I mean. You are my brothers and sisters. I love you. Keep it up because it isn't over. And one more from Eric Darnell. The time is now to find love in your heart. Love your brother, love your sister. Go grab a hug. Love the earth and take responsibility, not complacency. There is a darkness among men, government, and religion. Love has been lost, taken over by self-gratification, bigotry, and greed. We are coming into a new time of information and truth. Reach for it. It's right there. It will not go away. Open your heart. I have faith that things will be changing soon for the better, but it will take love to achieve it. Make all your decisions with love, and there will be no question that you have taken the wrong path. Thanks for all those wonderful postings, and it's been an absolute honor to be stuck in hell with the rest of you for the last 2 years. Lee, you speak out about the nuke stuff a lot. What do you think about this gaping nuclear wound in our planet that is Fukushima?
Wow, you guys are a bundle of laughs today. God, yeah, it is. I mean, it is tough times. I did a video about it. It was like a month before Fukushima that was about. It wasn't quite about something like Fukushima, but it was about how we're outsourcing our nuclear reactor testing to
yeah, I watched that this morning.
To countries that don't have the safety precautions we have. And so it was just weird that I kind of put that video out there and maybe it was even a couple of weeks before Fukushima. But yeah, it's a pretty scary thing. And I mean, it's just like, it would almost be so much easier to handle if you just felt like the truth was out there, and instead you feel like you're just constantly sifting through government lies, whether it's our government or Japan's government or whoever. You just want the truth. You want to know what the what the risks are and who's in trouble and who needs to get the hell out of where they're living and stop eating the food that's coming from there and all those things I think are just so important. And the point that you raised in the emails you were just reading that really I think is important is we are at a golden age of information if we can just keep it open and not let this information be curtailed by all the laws that they're trying to put forward, that corporations are trying to put forward to make it more difficult to get this information.
Well, it seems to just get worse and worse all the time from the environmental perspective. And you've talked about the BP disaster and fracking and all those kinds of things too, which we cover on our show as well, because you have to pay attention to all the environmental problems and all of the geological stuff that's going on that could make some of these problems worse.
Yeah, and it's just a corporate pillaging of the world is what it all boils down to. And you see it in specifics in the BP disaster, and then they ultimately pay such a little amount of money in fines, and no one ever goes to jail, and it doesn't matter. I mean the benefit for them to worry about how to solve these disasters when they happen or how to stop them from happening is not large enough, or the punishment is not large enough either. So there's no reason for them to actually worry about what happens when these things occur, because the profit they're going to make is going to far outweigh what they'll end up paying in fines and a great research and journalism on the Fukushima plant and the other plants that are done in the same style is done by Greg Palast, and I read about it in his book Vulture's Picnic, where he talks about the devices and the machines that are set to deal with a meltdown, and they're basically they haven't been tested in 20 years and they never worked in the first place, and basically the corporations that make them know that this isn't going to work, but they just need something there to tell people it's there. Like, oh yeah, we got it covered if there's a meltdown. Not really, but we want to be able to say we do.
What do you think, in a nutshell, has happened to our instincts of self-preservation? Why is it that so few people seem to be getting involved or even paying attention?
Well, I do think we've got amazing bread and circuses. We've got the best bread and circuses that anyone has ever seen. I mean, honestly, going to watch the Gladiators has nothing on 3D explosion movies. So we have wonderful bread and circuses. But beyond that, I think that our brains in a lot of ways are set for, they over millions of years of evolution, we were set for a what is now viewed as a simple existence, out on the farm, in the jungle, wherever. And we're not really capable of thinking in such, terms that are outside of our evolutionary path. Like, it's not easy for our brains to understand something that, like climate change. It absolutely, the boil a frog analogy is absolutely correct, that we can't view something that will kill us 200 years from now. We are more capable of understanding something that will kill us when it's standing across the room from us. And it also seems to be why we're okay with drone bombing while the pilots sit in offices in Las Vegas, because you don't have to actually be there. You don't have to stab the guy. You don't have to look him in the eye. And we've got to evolve. We've got to, I don't know if you can demand people evolve, but we need to grow.
What happened to you? How did you evolve? Like, how did you wake up? Was there one thing in particular that happened during your life, or was it the way you were raised or where you were raised?
It was a radioactive spider bite, like Spider-Man. It's very similar to that. No, I mean, I think most of my education, the important part of my education, came after college. I mean, I did go to the University of Virginia and studied and all that stuff, but I don't think I was really aware. I wasn't really awake until a few years after college. I started reading some important books, and it all started to open my eyes, started getting my media from outside sources rather than the mainstream networks that, even if they're not necessarily always lying to you. They're covering only the surface issue and not digging deeper. And it's, a combination of laziness and ratings. I mean, it ultimately, at the end of the day, it is all about, for them, it is all about ratings. And so it's, they just want it to be celebrity bullshit, right? That's what gets the numbers. And of course, they love a good fear story, but then they also are selling anxiety medications right afterwards. So,
yeah, and there's quite a few people taking those too. What is it, like 60% now of people are on something for like depression?
yeah, and we don't really look at all the side effects. I mean, they look for the major side effects. Is it going to stop your heart 12 minutes after you take the pill? But they don't really look for what does it do to someone over 20 years. I mean, the verdict is still out on Sweet and Low.
Yeah.
If we don't know what a pink packet will do to you, then how do we think that the 20 years of happy pills, what are they going to do?
Well, I think they push the happy pill so we don't pay attention. I mean, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay because you might have a better understanding of what's going on in our world if you're not medicated. And, a lot of those drugs for depression are only meant to be used as a last resort, meaning the person has tried everything in terms of like adjustments in their own life and diet and therapy before they start the drugs. And now it's just like you go in there, if you say one thing that indicates you're sad during the exam, they're writing you a script. And then all of the side effects that can come from that, stomach problems, and you start feeling like crap, so you need more.
Right,
Because
and
now you feel worse than you did when you first started it. Before you were just sad. Now you're sad and sick.
yeah, there's nothing worse than sad diarrhea. That's the worst combination. But no, it definitely is systematic now. In that, I think that when the drug commercials first started really hitting our airwaves, I think people thought, okay, well, that's great as a drug commercial, but it doesn't really matter because the doctor's only going to give you what you need. Like it's up to the doctor. It's not. I don't understand why these people are advertising to me. But in fact, people are looking for the doctors. At the end of the day, they're looking for the doctors that are going to give them those pills that they've seen advertised in the cute little commercials. I mean, my dad is a psychoanalyst and he doesn't really prescribe medicine. He only does talking therapy for the most part, and he gets a lot of clients that don't want to see him or patients that don't want to see him because they want the pills. They quickly ascertain that he's not going to give them the pills that they saw advertised that turn that little frowny circle into the happy circle. That's what I want.
Right.
So it becomes very systematic where the people are asking for them. The doctors feel like they can't keep their business going or help or quote unquote help people if they don't give them the pills because they're not going to come see them.
We always try to figure out like where all these roads lead back to with a lot of these problems. And a lot of this stuff seems to lead back to the Queen, at least in terms of the nuke stuff. And I found a really good article this morning that was on Eyes Wise Open called Fukushima, the Media, and the Uranium Queen. And this was published 2 months after the Fukushima disaster happened. And the person who wrote this article was already making a lot of these correlations to how, the Queen owning a lot of the mining operations and the media and her ties into the media and so forth. I want to read a little bit from that because Loren Murray was also featured in this article. It says, forget about radioactive fallout. Look here, the Queen is visiting Ireland. 2 months on and no end in sight. Yes, this is the current state of affairs when it comes to the painful issue of the ongoing nuclear radiation spills in Japan. Yet very little facts of the true extent of this global catastrophe trickles down to the forefront of the mass media and the collective consciousness at large. Surprisingly, the public who pay and will continue to pay the price with hard-earned cash and the consequence to their health seem quite content feeding on a diet of already dished-out trivia such as which royal is wearing what hat, who was not invited, and what is the sense of priority. In the same token, while too many Irish people are evacuated from their own streets to make way for a contentious royal visit and protect the Queen, not enough Japanese people are evacuated from their own homes to protect them from the uncontrolled crisis of the nuclear radiation that will plague their environment and ours for millennia to come. Yet the important announcement by TEPCO admitting that figures confirmed a nuclear meltdown took place at Fukushima as early as 16 hours after the earthquake on the 11th of March paled in comparison to the worldwide coverage and discussion on how elegant the Queen looked in white and which Irish public servant dared to bow before her. When it comes to the British monarchy versus nuclear radiation competing for the headlines, British monarchy seems to be winning hands down every time. Why is that? Is it really our warped sense of priorities, or is there an organized, deliberate, and well-executed diversion of public attention away from an issue as important as self-preservation? I know it may seem obscure to entwine the British monarchy with the issues nuclear radiation. On the surface, it may seem random and unrelated, but is it? Or could it be so related that when the connections between the two are understood, all of a sudden the strange sense of priority starts to make perfect sense? When the earthquake and tsunami hit the east coast of Japan, the media could not have enough of it. We had 24/7 on-the-ground reporting with up-to-the-minute updates of the unfolding devastation. But the moment it became clear that the main legacy of this event was a meltdown, in capital letters, all the mainstream media was diverted to Gaddafi's abuse of human rights, as if that was news, and Japan was left alone to lick its own radioactive wounds, save the nuclear industry's hyenas sniffing around for rich pickings of the cleanup operation, of course. Yes, the last thing that the powers that be wanted to do was open the door to the age-old debate regarding the safety issues, the true cost and price we, along with future generations, will end up paying for the so-called cheap and clean energy of nuclear power. A truthful and honest debate will also not be welcomed by many in the global warming church, who consider fossil fuel to be at least on par with Satan and unwittingly promote the proliferation of nuclear power as the next best thing since sliced bread, or the lesser of two evils. However, despite common public perception that those two separate and distinct groups are often at odds with each other, the truth of the matter is at the top of what seems to be twin peaks, there is one capstone and one strange unity of purpose. We found this out during the 1973 oil embargo, when there was a surplus of uranium on the world market. But uranium prices started to go up, and Westinghouse and GE, whose designs are used in 85% of civilian reactors around the world, guaranteed that uranium fuel prices when they sell the reactors to different countries or entities. So they got mad because they had to make up the difference. They had to eat that increase in uranium prices. So they hired Dr. Jay Gould, a world-class statistician, to find out why the prices were going up, and he was the one who unmasked the Queen. The Queen's Death Star. Lorraine Murray is a well-known Livermore Nuclear Lab whistleblower. She's an independent scientist and international expert on radiation and public health issues, serving as environmental commissioner for the city of Berkeley. She conducted scientific research in 42 countries and contributed to a scientific report on DU for the United Nations Subcommission investigating the illegality of depleted uranium munitions. Ms. Murray has a BS in geology, an MA in Near Eastern Studies, and a PhD in the geosciences, has years of experience in this field, so one can expect her to know a thing or two about the nuclear business. She coined the term the Queen's Death Star to describe Earth. In an interview with Regina Meredith of CMN, she went on to explain why. The Queen of England owns all of the uranium in Canada and Australia. She owns much of mineral rights to those two vast regions. 30% of the uranium produced globally every year is from Canada. But the Canadians have a law. The Canadian uranium cannot be used for weapons purposes. It can only be used, for instance, for nuclear power plants. The City of London bankers, the Rothschilds, are the Queen's business manager. And the City of London actually owns the nuclear power industry, and the Rothschilds control uranium prices and supplies globally. Dr. Jay Gould revealed in his book, The Enemy Within, that the British royal family privately owns investments in uranium holdings worth over $6 billion through Rio Tinto mines. The mining company was formed for the British royal family in the late 1950s by Roland Walter, the Queen's buccaneer. Born in 1917 through illegitimate German parentage, and before changing his name, Roland Walter was a passionate member of the Nazi youth movement, and by 1933, a classmate described him as an ardent supporter of Hitler and an arrogant, nasty piece of work to boot. His meteoric rise and protection by intel agencies and the British Crown are an indication of what an asset he has been to the Queen for decades, is Africa's most powerful Western businessman. Africa and Australia are two of the main sources of uranium in the world. Filmmaker David Bradbury made Blowing in the Wind to expose depleted uranium bombing and gunnery range activities contaminating pristine areas of eastern Australia, and to expose plans to extract over $36 billion in uranium from mines in the interior over the next 6 years. Halliburton has finished construction of a 1,000-mile railway from the mining area to a port on the north coast of Australia to transport the ore. The Queen's favorite American buccaneers, the Cheney, Halliburton, and the Bush family, are tied to her through uranium mining and the shared use of illegal depleted uranium munitions in the Middle East, Central Asia, and Kosovo and Bosnia. You've talked about Dick Cheney before a few times, haven't you, Lee?
Oh, he's a good guy. Don't be hard on Cheney. Come on. And you were also down on the Nazi youth. I don't know why you would insult those two things. That really, when I agreed to come on here, I did not know there would be down talk about the Nazi youth. No, but to go back to what you were saying about the Queen's visit to Ireland, it reminded me of I think it was an idea for a video that I never did, but I should do it. And now it reminds me of how these catastrophes, Fukushima and BP and oil spill and everything. They can't compete with our media cycle in terms of like celebrities. Like celebrities have to reinvent themselves or wear a new dress once a week to get back in the news. And the BP oil spill just couldn't compete with that. Everybody talked about it until the well was capped. And then it got about one more week after the well was capped. And it was like, well, you got to dress the birds up in something new because they keep wearing that same oil outfit. And the media doesn't want to talk about it. You got to put them in something with sequins, or it just they can't compete with the media cycle that our celebrity bullshit news puts out there.
Well, this article went on to say we don't need to go that far to demonstrate that a large percentage of what is published by news outlets the world over is derived from only two main sources, Reuters and Associated Press. One just needs to know who owns those two organizations. Yep, you guessed it. As Humphrey Bogart once said, here you will find the usual suspects. According to Eustace Mullen's book, Who Owns the TV Networks, the House of Rothschild bought Reuters news service in the 1800s, and Reuters bought the Associated Press in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, the media consolidation is getting pretty disgusting. I was listening to this thing about Comcast and how they own, it's like 80% of every major media market in America or something, and it's getting even higher. And they buy off the FCC so that they can push through more deals and essentially have a monopoly. And once they can do that, they can then charge. They keep fighting for various ways to charge more for internet bandwidth so that their networks are, it could ultimately get to the point that it's like if you watch something on a website that's not theirs, then you're charged more. And of course, that will give them a huge sway over the information we receive, because if it's too expensive to get the proper information, everybody will just turn to the less expensive stuff.
Well, you've actually been on some of these news programs. What's been your experience? Are you censored? Was this, I heard you debated a Tea Party candidate on BBC. Is that true?
Yeah, I was on, so the one you're talking about, I was on BBC's Newsnight with Jeremy Paxman. It's one of their bigger news shows. And they brought me on against Sharon Angle, who almost became a senator from Nevada by about 1 percentage point. She was made famous by such quotes as women who become pregnant from rape should have the baby in order to make lemonade from lemons. So a lovely lady. And they had me on opposite her, and I had a lot of fun with that, tearing her apart. Luckily, the BBC they wanted me to do that. Like they wanted me to tear down the crazy right wing. So I wasn't censored because I was doing what they wanted me to do, but it was because it was what I wanted to do as well. The opposite kind of thing was I was on Fox News. They wanted me to just tell little jokes, and instead I called them a parade of propaganda and a festival of ignorance. The clip ultimately went viral and has been watched millions upon millions of times.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then it's more of a subtle in terms of censorship. It's more of a subtle censorship in that like most networks aren't going to have me on, and if they are, they're not going to talk about the certain issues. So it's like I am allowed on certain networks. I was on RT's Breaking the Set the other day. I'm on Current TV some, but a lot of networks are just not willing to take a chance that I'm going to say something they disagree with.
Right. Where can people see all of your stuff? Can you give us
Lee,
some of your links?
yeah, LeeCamp.net is my website. That has a little bit of everything. I put out video rants that you said you've been watching a lot of called
Yeah.
Moment of Clarity, and those come out twice a week. I have a new kind of Moment of Clarity show that's coming out about once or twice a month. Where I interview cool people. Roseanne's on the next one, Roseanne Barr, and
Uh-huh.
Greg Palast was on the last one, and other great activists, Margaret Flowers and Kevin Zeese, were on the second episode, talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, another horrifying thing, which it will affect the issues you're talking about because, like, for example, you said Canada has a law that their uranium can't be used in weapons. Well, the TPP would allow in the U.S. and Canada, if they sign on to it, it would allow corporations to sue if they don't get the profits they want because of laws or environmental laws or whatnot. So basically, they could sue Canada because they want to make weapons from the uranium and they're not allowed to. And that decision would then be made by an international tribunal of largely corporate judges. So it's really horrific. Uh,
Wow.
and nobody's even heard about it. It's called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Obama mentioned it. I think he had the first public mention in his recent State of the Union, but he said it in a positive light as if this is a good thing. And it's being decided by 600 corporate lobbyists. Really, really horrific stuff. But then I also, so I have the YouTube channel and I do the videos there. That's connected to the Young Turks as well. And I have Twitter at Lee Camp. And I guess those are the main ones. Facebook.com/LeeCampComedian. I have a book out and two live comedy albums. My people may not be able to tell by our conversation, but my main career is a comedian, so I do a lot of touring.
Oh, well, if I wanted to ask you, do you think we should be spending billions right now driving a dune buggy around Mars and analyzing the environment in excruciating detail when we have basically a planet that's in intensive care?
Well, I will tell you that I have been converted on the whole NASA argument to disagree that they are a dumb expenditure. But I agree with you that the people who say, "Hey, let's look into Mars because we've destroyed Earth," are out of their minds. They're out of their freaking minds because we have a planet that is about 95% perfect for us, and we want to try and make a planet that is about 2% perfect for us work
Right.
is utterly insane. But the amount of money spent on NASA, even when it was at its height, is like Americans spend more on pizza each year than is spent on NASA. It's an incredibly small percentage of our costs, and it's like you could pay it by simply closing some of the corporate loopholes on taxes. I mean, Facebook and GE and these companies are not paying any taxes, zero taxes, and so
Right.
finding the money to explore the universe would be very, very small, and in fact it's probably one of the few positive things mankind's doing right now. So
Yeah. You also talk about one of our other favorite topics on this show, cannabis, because I believe that
I thought you were
cannabis
going to
should
say
be
creme brulee, but
what's that?
I thought you were going to say creme brulee, but no. That's
Well,
right.
medical marijuana has many health benefits, especially if you're sick, but it can prevent some illness too because it has very strong properties to protecting DNA. I feel very strongly that every man, woman, and child should be able to work it into their diet to help protect them from a lot of the nuclear stuff that we're exposed to.
Well, it is kind of insane to make this, plant so highly illegal. I mean, it's ridiculous in general, as you're saying, but medicinally, it's truly insane to be against medicinal marijuana. I mean, when people are sick, give them what they want. When they're sick, give them cheesecake and balloons and hookers and whatever. That's how it works. If you're sick, you get what you want. I think that's how it should work. And furthermore, it's not like our government is against drugs. They're fine with certain drugs. They're fine with antidepressants, which you brought up recently, some of which have been proven to cause suicide. So they're fine with antidepressants that can cause suicide. They're fine with cigarettes that cause 500,000 deaths a year. They're fine with alcohol that causes God knows how many deaths a year. But they have a problem with medicinal marijuana because it might cause what? A run on Tostitos? A spike in the Cartoon Network ratings?
Well, I think if more people used it, they wouldn't be going to the doctor as much because they would feel too good.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that really what it came to, and I was watching a report on hemp the other day and how insane it is to make that illegal as well. And even if marijuana, whether it's a miracle cure or it's not a miracle cure, it's so not as harmful to anyone's life as is alcohol or as is a bunch of these prescription pills that people are taking. And so, the idea to put someone in jail for it, I mean, and that's another, it gets to, really at the heart of it, it gets to the number of people we put in jail. I mean, we have created the biggest prison country in the world. We have 25% of the world's prisoners and only 5% of the world's population. So we put these people behind bars, destroying lives, destroying families over what? The fact that they lit a plant on fire?
With everything you know about like world events, if you could bug out to another country today, where would you go?
I haven't been to enough. I've seen Canada a bunch, the UK a bunch, Australia, little bit of Europe, but so I need to see more. I will admit that I am not as educated on travel as I should be. Guatemala I went to. It's tough to say. I do love the UK. I'm going to tour there again in May, going on a long tour over there. I mean, it's beautiful. The people are beautiful, but I've spent very little time in a lot of Europe, and I bet I would like a lot of that as well. Oh, Spain. Spain's amazing. The time I did a tour of Barcelona, Madrid, and it's just gorgeous. And I feel like there's a little more of a sense. Nothing's black and white, but there's a little more of a sense of like, working to live, working so you can have a life rather than living to work,
Yeah.
over there. There's a little bit less of a sense of I need to get outlandishly wealthy and have material possessions, and a little more of a sense of we're here for, love and art and that type of thing.
I actually lived in Spain for like 10 years, just during the summer when we were off school, because my dad was working there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really awesome. It was so beautiful, and there is so much like culture, and
Yeah.
I really liked it there. I would have loved to have taken my kids there, but now it's so expensive to travel too that we've never been able to have a trip like that. Although I am going with them on spring break to Mexico in a couple weeks.
That'll be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, I agree. It's a wonderful country over there. And I think there's a lot of countries that kind of have a little more of a sensibility of we're not going to step on our neighbor's throat for profit.
Right. I wanted to ask you about two of my favorite uploads from you. You're a Slave and Here's Why.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a couple of like points that you made in that
Yeah.
episode?
Yeah, and that does get to what we're talking about. But so a book that was really influential to me when I was kind of first waking up politically, almost 10 years ago, I guess, was The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, by John Perkins, where he kind of details, he was in the CIA, and he's a whistleblower, and he details essentially how we go into other countries, and we've been doing this for 40, 50 years, and we, through the IMF and the World Bank, we offer them huge loans to build up their infrastructure, but they then are indebted to us essentially forever. I mean, they can never pay off the debt, and the debt with the interest and everything is just outlandish, and so they end up paying half their GDP every year just to stay out of just to pay off the debt. And it basically gives us control over them without weapons, without military. It just gives us financial control over these countries. And my argument in You're a Slave, that's one of the moments of clarity you're talking about, is that they've essentially, once the power elite, once our incredibly wealthy, the monstrously wealthy, realized that they could do that to other countries, it kind of seems like they decided, okay, well, let's do it to our own people, because it's working elsewhere. Why not do it here? So now you're, in your young formative years, you're locked into a lot of debt, usually through college debt, but schooling debt, but also through other things, for mortgages and whatever else. And once you're under that gun, you're very controllable. I mean, you have to spend all day, every day working at a job just to pay off your debt, just so you aren't kicked out on the streets. And it's a pretty horrible situation. And it feels like they have essentially enslaved the American people as well as other countries under this mammoth debt.
Hey, Lee, would you mind if any of our listeners called in to ask you a question?
No, I don't mind. Just
okay.
Tell them to be nice.
Okay, be nice. Can you also talk about your moment of clarity? You can't pepper spray a mental awakening.
Yeah, that one I did. And actually, I ultimately named my second album, my newer album, after it. It's called Pepper Spray the Tears Away. And I did that one during Occupy. I was a big proponent of Occupy and kind of helped put out the word a little bit before it started, and ultimately performed at a dozen different Occupies around the country and Canada, and each one was kind of different and amazing in its own way, and it was really an incredible time. And that video is basically just talking about. I believe that we are, in a sense, in the middle of a global awakening. I mean, you have to think about how long enlightenments take. They take, normally they take hundreds of years, and with enlightenments that kind of came about because of things like the cotton gin or the printing press, it took 100 years or more for it to spread around and for it to truly have the effect that it was able to create. And even then, it was largely among the elite, or at least the upper classes. The printing press, it wasn't like the lower class was reading books, really. So it had this huge effect, but it took a long time, and it wasn't necessarily amongst anyone. Now, consider what's happened with the internet. We've gone from no internet, and information traveling by newspaper and phone and TV as of, 30 years ago to, or even less, to essentially everybody doing just about everything on the internet. I mean, every phone connected. It truly is a global awakening in a sense that I don't think people understand. And so the idea is you can't pepper spray that. You can't stop that with police barricades and ankle sprayings. And from the protests I've seen, pepper spraying us anyway is like throwing water on gremlins. The more you do it, the more of us show up. So you can't really stop a mental awakening, which is what I feel this is. It's kind of a mental revolution, and I think it's going to take a long time. I think that it's going to have ups and downs, but I think the arc of history is bending towards a more informed time.
You know what? I thought we kind of got a taste of the global consciousness thing when the meteor happened in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because, it's all everyone was talking about. And
Right.
People were trying to figure out, when I first saw the video, I thought it was fake because I was like, there's no way that kind of explosion happened with this. I didn't understand from some of the first videos that I saw that there was a sonic boom that happened later, and as people started figuring this out, and they were scared for the people there, and is it going to happen now here? Because we had this asteroid flyby thing that was going on the same weekend,
Right.
and it was kind of like everybody was talking about the same thing at once, And it was actually a really beautiful thing to be part of, because if we all did that all the time about a lot of these issues, we could
Right.
accomplish so much.
Right. And think about the fact that there was a time not that long ago, what, 100 years ago or less, that a major event, you know, well, the Fukushima earthquake, but ignoring the nuclear power plant, just the earthquake and the tsunami could happen, and you wouldn't hear about it. You know, New York would hear about it a week or two later. Maybe a newspaper would let us know that something had happened, and you wouldn't hear anything more about it for another month until maybe some information trickled out. I mean, we are in a completely different time with exactly what you're talking about. The fact that a meteor can hit, and within minutes, you're watching video of it at your home.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible. An example, a more personal example for me was I was doing this podcast, and a friend of mine, another comedian, agreed to do both our podcasts at the same time. So I did an interview on his, and he did an interview on mine, and we were in his studio in Manhattan. And we do his interview, and then we stop and we take a break, and we're getting ready to do mine. And he uploads the episode. So before I have even left the office, the studio that we're in, I get a text on my phone from someone saying, "Great job on, you know, Jimmy's podcast. Really enjoyed it." And I'm thinking, I haven't even walked out of the studio yet, and this person is in the Isle of Wight of the UK. I'm in New York, and somehow has already listened to the entire episode. It was like, it's creepy. It's creepy.
That's cool. Do you ever go around on the street and just like randomly talk to people about like if they're awake or not?
No, I mean, I've done on the street like segments where I walk around and ask people questions. And actually, it did kind of scare me because the one we did was last summer. Michelle Bachmann was still running for president, and one of the questions I was asking people for this video, I was in Times Square, and I'm asking people what they think of Michelle Bachmann, and like about 80% had never heard of her.
Uh-huh.
And it was only weeks after, so I guess this is over a year, well over a year ago. She was like second in the running for Republican nominee for president.
Right.
And 80% of the people had never heard of her, which really scared me.
You're from New York?
No, I'm from Virginia. I grew up in Virginia, and I've been in New York 10 years.
Were you there when Superstorm Sandy hit?
I was actually touring in Canada when it hit.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering, like, how, if you had damage in your area and, like, how they've been about cleaning it up and whether or not that's kind of woken people up, too, like FEMA and...
Yeah, I think it did wake people up to the fact that we need to help each other, and that it can't just be about profit. My area was pretty much okay in Brooklyn, but I did go volunteer with Occupy Sandy and some other groups in Coney Island and the Rockaways, and it's like insane what was going on out. I mean, I was helping out 2 weeks after the storm, and there was still no power inside 14-story high project buildings, and they've got elderly people up on the 14th story who can't walk down all those stairs, so they're essentially trapped up there like a prison. And we're bringing them food and stuff, and it's amazing to see that it feels like we're losing sight of helping our neighbors and stuff, and a lot of people were helping, and it was great to see that, but it should have been much more than it was, I think.
You have a really great perspective, and I think a lot of people really get you. And we kind of all think alike. And you mentioned a couple of books that have been influential to you. Could you tell us a couple of them for our listeners to check out? Because I think we're all going to be looking for a distraction in the next couple of weeks after this 2-year anniversary thing.
Well, I'll tell you a couple that might be depressing, but I will then tell you at least one that is not depressing. But Confessions of an Economic Hitman was a great one by John Perkins, and he still does a lot of interviews and a lot of stuff, so you can look him up. Obviously, anything by Chomsky is always great. I read a lot of Howard Zinn when I was kind of educating myself, I guess. And the positive one I was talking about that people should read if they want to kind of be inspired that this stuff makes a difference is it's called A Power Governments Cannot Suppress, and it's one of his later books. And I only have one tattoo on my body. It's on my arm, and it says, "Small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can become a power no government can suppress, a power that can change the world." And I think it's absolutely true. I think that anything that has ever changed the world has started small. And that's what I try to tell people about Occupy, who like to say, oh, Occupy didn't accomplish anything. You're talking about the first ever global, spontaneous, leaderless protest movement. I mean, there were chapters in every country in the world, just about. And it happened spontaneously out of the blue and over a matter of weeks. And people wanted it to what? Change the world instantaneously? I think the fact that it even existed was changing the world. It was changing our understanding of protest. It was changing our understanding of our ability to stand up and say something. And so I think that it accomplished a lot, that was outside of the, pushing a single bill for Congress.
I'm getting a message from Jules right now. She said, chat wants to know, they are begging, is the Pope gay or not?
Let's hope so. I think it'd be a great moment for gay people everywhere if we finally had a gay Pope. That would be a big step forward. No, he was a Nazi youth. You brought up Nazi youth, so he was a Nazi youth. He would probably be the first gay Nazi youth as well, at least out gay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it will be interesting to see if there's some reason he's stepping down and it finally comes out. I mean, I think that if people want to use religion for their own reasons, that's fine. But I think using it to ignore reality and ignore science is a terrible thing. That people need to accept science and put their spiritual beliefs second if the facts prove otherwise.
I saw a video of the Pope. He was being met by all the cardinals. This was like a year ago, and a lot of them wouldn't even shake hands with him. I mean, there's been something weird going on there for a while with, I don't know.
That's interesting. Maybe it's that magic ring he wears. That might be good.
Well, can you give us all your links again for anyone who tuned in late so they know how to find your stuff?
Sure. The book and the ebook is called Moment of Clarity. It was, for a while, it was number 5 on Amazon's political humor list. It was actually beating Bill Maher for a minute, but it was still losing to Glenn Beck. However, I'm just excited that Glenn Beck is now listed as political humor, because I think that's about right.
What do you think of Bill Maher?
I like some of Bill Maher's stuff, but I think at the end of the day there's a lot of xenophobia there, and there's a fair amount of misogyny, and it's you can't expect everyone to be perfect. So I still like some of his stuff, but it's sometimes it's one thing to be opposed to religion and an atheist and be a strong atheist. I think that's fine, but his stuff seems to come down on the side of anti-Muslim far more than anything else.
Did you see his religious documentary that he did?
Yeah, I largely liked it.
Yeah, I'd love to see you as like one of his panelists. You could really shake things up over there at HBO.
That would be a lot of fun. I don't know if he's willing to have me on.
Tell us your other links. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. The other ones were leecamp.net is where you can get all my stuff. Also, if you subscribe, then for free on YouTube, you'll find out about the new Moment of Clarity rants. That's if you go to youtube.com/leecamp and the number 2 or /Moment of Clarity show. Either of those will work. And I'm at facebook.com/leecampcomedian and Twitter @leecamp.
That's how I first found you. Jules sent me one of your moments of clarity, and I share those all over the place. I think they're wonderful. And when we have so many complex problems in our
Hmm.
society today, I like to look for simple solutions, and we definitely need to remember to laugh and enjoy our lives too, so that we
Yeah,
can keep doing this for a while because it's heavy, heavy stuff to deal with day in and day out.
yeah, I think the two things, if I had to boil down what it is I do, I think one is contribute laughs to this discussion in such a way that it's not undermining the beliefs and the ideas. It's giving us a little bit of a break because burnout is so heavy among activists that I think you have to have it. And the other thing is, and I don't quite know where I got this from, but an ability to boil complicated things down to 3 minutes so that because even if something takes 20 minutes to explain, you're gonna lose me. So it's like in this information age where you just got this flood of blogoria spraying you in the face endlessly. You kind of need something to boil some of these tougher issues down. And one of the biggest compliments I got was when I did a video based on some of the Yes Men's work, and they emailed me, and Andy from the Yes Men emailed me, and he said, "You basically said in 3 minutes what we spent a 2-hour movie trying to say." So,
Right.
so that was quite flattering, and they're some of my heroes, the Yes Men. That's another thing people should check out if they want to learn about these issues, but also kind of have it in a fun way. The Yes Men do amazing activist pranks. They have movies out there and books and stuff.
Well, we really appreciate what you do, and the way that you do it is very unique and very funny. And we're really glad that we met you. And thank you so much for coming on the show today and helping us celebrate our 1-year anniversary.
Such a pleasure, and thank you for having me on. And keep up the fight. What you do is so important.
Well, thank you. On Thursday, we're going to be hearing from the United Knowledge on YouTube and from GLP, and he's been talking about the boom events that have been going on all over the country. He is done great breakdowns by using government data and going back and researching connections between Pacific Plate movement, the boom events, earthquakes, and he's going to tell us how he came across all this information, how he puts it together, and where he thinks all of this is going. So we'll be looking forward to talking with him. Thank you again, Lee, and thank you, Jules, for holding my hand for the last 99 shows. Share love, caring, and concern for your fellow man, and stay safe, everyone.
The same issues that were on the table in the Protect IP Act are now on the table in the negotiations about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement.
Open Gungan style.